Welcome, seekers of hidden knowledge, to the mystical realm of the occult. Delve into the secrets of the universe as we journey together into the enigmatic world of ancient wisdom. Brought to you by your guide through the shadows of enlightenment, Wisdom Rocker. Uncover the mysteries, unlock the power, and journey with us as we explore the hidden depths within the pages of forgotten scrolls and ancient texts. Prepare to embark on a journey beyond the ordinary, where wisdom transcends time and knowledge is your greatest ally. Welcome to Wisdom Rocker. Prepare to awaken your inner sage. In this video, we will be uncovering the wisdom within the chapters of
Fragments of Truth by Richard Ingalese and Isabella Ingalese. Chapter 3. Vibration. Scientists tell us that vibration is motion and is the underlying cause of everything that exists as form. But the occultist goes further and says that vibration began with time and was the result of the desire of the universal consciousness for light and for mental and material expression in forms. The scientist says it is atoms, ions, corpuscles, and electrical invisibles that vibrate. He admits that he has never seen one of these infinitesimal divisions of matter, yet he blindly claims that they exist, as necessities, since they are the bricks with which the universe is builded, and here he stops for lack of further knowledge along this line. Such students as are not satisfied with such meager information as the scientist has to give, may turn to the occultist and learn that the atom is the smallest indivisible particle of matter and is a globular, vibrating center of magnetic force. It has two distinct motions, a rotary, or generating motion, and an elliptical, or manifesting motion. It is an infinitesimal portion of the universal consciousness and has a positive and a negative aspect. Its positive aspect is atomic consciousness, its negative aspect is materiality, and neither aspect can function without the other. By reason of its conscious, or positive aspect, its rotary motion is maintained, and by reason of its materiality, or negative aspect, its elliptical, or manifesting motion is sustained. During the long cosmic nights, while the universal consciousness was unconscious and resting, there was no vibration of atoms in the universe. There was nothing but darkness and silence. Such portions of the universal consciousness as had, in previous cosmic days, been particled into atoms were as vibrationless as was the unparticled portion. All forms had disappeared, and the universal consciousness was a boundless, homogenetic, motionless sea. Before the great consciousness became unconscious, it knew how long the coming cosmic night would last, and, as a finite mind, before sinking into repose, knows the hour it must waken, so the universal consciousness knew when its rest would end, and when its mental and material manifestation would again begin. It was in the center of the universe that vibration began on the morning of each cosmic day, and it was, and it will be, in the center of the universe that vibration ended, and will end, at the close of this and of every other cosmic day. And such centers as were first created, by universal consciousness for it to manifest through, were formed at the center of the universe. They were and are the vital organs of the macrocosm and stand in the same relationship to the universal consciousness as do the vital organs of the microcosmic man to his physical form of manifestation. It was at these centers, where the vital organs of the macrocosm were to be placed, that atomic vibration began, as it was at the centers where the vital organs of microcosmic man were to be, that his material, atomic vibrations began, before he became a manifesting center of consciousness. When the first great desire for material manifestation began in the universal consciousness, a few atoms at the center of the universe began slowly to rotate and, because of their rotary motions, those atoms became differentiated, or separated from the homogeneous mass of unconsciousness, of which they had been a part, and became individual vortices of force. They were preparing to manifest the force they were generating. The immediate effect of the rotary motion of the first few atoms was to create a magnetic center of attraction for more atoms to differentiate and to join the vortex already formed, and thus the nucleoid of the macrocosmic heart was created. As an illustration, there is a large block of ice. It is lying smooth and motionless. Suddenly, in the center of that ice, something stirs. Now there appears to be a few infinitesimal grains of ice moving slightly, and now more grains of ice are joining in the movement. As each grain separates from the original mass, it is attracted to and joins that vibrating center, and now that center is changing in appearance. It is no longer ice but is transformed into a liquid. The ice has melted. The transformation of the solid block of ice into liquid was caused by the increased rotary and elliptical motions of the atoms composing the ice. And the increase of motion, or vibration, was produced by the minute bit of consciousness of each atom responding to its innate desire for a broader manifestation than it could have in its congealed form as ice. When there was no desire for manifestation in a higher form than that of ice, there was neither a rotary nor an elliptical motion, perceptible, of the atoms composing that mass, but, when the desire for a higher manifestation awakened in each atom, then vibration and differentiation began and the ice evolved into water, the next higher state of consciousness above ice. In the beginning of a cosmic day, before any material forms have been created, there are two grades of atoms, the negative and the positive. The negative grade is that portion of God, universal consciousness, which has never manifested in forms of any kind during any cosmic day. That grade can be called the superabundance of God. It is really the great reserve of the universal consciousness and is sometimes called the undifferentiated part of God. When compared with the positive, manifesting grade of atoms, it is as the potter's clay compared with the potter's wares. It is fallow now, but, in days to come, it will be gradually brought into manifestation, as it is needed to carry out the plans of deity. But it is the vibrating, manifesting portion of God, universal consciousness, that is now under consideration, and it is composed of atoms and atoms. Some are vibrating more rapidly than others, because they belong to a higher grade of consciousness than others. And this is because they have been differentiated for a longer time, have vibrated more, have generated more force and have been used in the composition of higher forms than others. It is the difference between the experienced and inexperienced atoms which makes the distinction. In the beginning of this cosmic day, when the manifesting portion of God desired to again manifest in the forms of men and things, it knew, by its past experiences in other days, that the vibration of all its manifesting particles, or atoms, must be established before any forms could be produced, and it was through the conscious aspect of the highest grade of atoms, at the center of the universe, that rotation, or vibration, began. And it was from that point, as a center, that the desire emanated which inspired all other rotating atoms to vibrate higher. As an illustration of the operation of the law of attraction, or of sympathy, as it is sometimes called, the same principle manifests in the human family as contagion of action. For example, should a man start to run, on a thoroughfare, almost everyone who saw him, would first wonder why he was running, and then the street would be filled with persons running after him. If a person in a crowd begins to laugh and continues laughing for a while, everyone who hears, laughs also. If a pathetic scene upon the stage causes a few individuals to weep, the whole audience becomes affected, through the operation of the law of attraction, or sympathy, and weep, or feel like weeping. And as it is with centers of consciousness, so it is with the atoms composing those centers. They vibrate, or rotate, according to the extent of each one's inherent power, and are in sympathy with all other atoms in their individual center. The creation of a form began with the amalgamation of two, or more, atoms vibrating at the same common rate. And the growth of a form is due to the continuous attraction of more atoms of a common rate to that nucleus, or center. For example, the vortex of atoms that was the beginning of a pine tree, began with the amalgamation of a few atoms vibrating at the same rate. And, through the magnetic attraction, or sympathy, emanating from those few atoms, as a vortex, or nucleus, more atoms of the same rate were attracted. But atoms vibrating at a different rate, such as would combine to compose an elm, or a maple tree, were repelled from that center. Through its magnetic attraction, that pine tree center slowly accumulated from earth, air and water only such atoms as would make it consistent in all its parts, which would make it a pine tree and nothing else. There was another element that entered into the creation of the pine tree. There was a certain amount of concentration of consciousness, as well as the sympathy, or attraction, of its atoms for each other. There was consciousness enough in each atom composing the pine tree to enable them to reject, or repel, as well as to attract and select, the right atoms to harmonize with them, and to make their center a perfect tree. And this small amount of consciousness grew with the tree's growth, because each atom that came into it brought a bit more consciousness to swell the conglomerate whole until it became a pine tree consciousness with its own individual form, odor, and color. But, if that pine tree consciousness had not also had the power to repel atoms of a different vibration, instead of bearing pine needles and pine cones, it would have borne leaves and fruit. Forms, on the spiritual plane of consciousness, are composed of atoms vibrating at a very rapid rate, are of finest texture and of most exquisite colorings. The beauty and fineness of spiritual forms are due to the fact that they are composed of atoms that have evolved from lower grades of manifestation, through many forms of expression, to the spiritual plane. All consciousness is intensified through the experiences of expression, and, whether it be an atom, or a conglomerate mass of atoms forming a sun, a world, a man, or an animal, manifestation, or expression, is the only means by which consciousness evolves. The atoms on the mental planes are next lower, in their rates of vibration, than are those upon the spiritual planes, and their colorings are also varied according to their rates of vibration, but each mental form is individualized and manifests according to its development, or undevelopment, as the case may be. For example, there are many so-called unusual minds. Unusual because they have mental characteristics peculiar to themselves. They live upon the earth in physical bodies, or they may be excarnated and abide upon some of the subjective planes of consciousness, but they are not in rapport with the mass of consciousnesses around them. Such minds glorify everything they see. To them the color blue is bluer than it is to others. The sunshine is more golden and the moonlight has a charm that others cannot see. Music, to them, is entrancing, art, uplifting, beauty, adorable, and love, glorifying. These minds are idealistic, and the atoms, which compose them, vibrate at a more rapid rate than do the atoms that compose the minds who never can determine the true color of a thing, and who like sunshine better than clouds because they feel more comfortable on a sunny day. Or, who like posters better than pictures because they are funnier. The occultist would describe the idealistic mind as in rapport with the higher cosmic forces, while those minds who do not idealize, vibrate with the lower shades of the red, green and orange cosmic forces. On the material plane, the atoms composing physical, or material, forms are of a still lower rate of vibration than are those upon the mental plane, but everything from the greatest and most sublime, down to the smallest and most insignificant center of consciousness, generates and possesses powers that manifest as attraction and repulsion, in its individual radius or sphere. And whether a center belongs to the constructive, or destructive, side of nature, depends upon its mode of manifestation. If it manifests more attraction than repulsion, it is more constructive than destructive. But if it manifests more repulsion than attraction, then it is more destructive than constructive. In the morning of this, our cosmic day, before any forms had been created, the universal consciousness started its constructive atoms rotating from left to right and its destructive atoms rotating from right to left. The reason construction goes from left to right and destruction from right to left has not been revealed by universal consciousness to finite minds. And it is quite unimportant, to finite minds, which direction, constructive, or destructive, atoms rotate, but, for the sake of the evolvement of forms, it is most important that the constructionists should preponderate in numbers over the destructionists. For, if the atoms vibrating destructively should equal, or exceed, in numbers the atoms vibrating constructively, then the destruction of all forms, in the universe, would ensue, and evolution would cease. As an illustration of how forms composed of destructive, or outlaw, atoms disturb constructive centers, or forms, in cosmos, comets may be considered. These are centers of consciousness composed of atoms that rotate from right to left. They are cosmic centers, with no dependable orbits of manifestation, but go rushing about in space, for a time, colliding with other centers, which come in their way. They are destructive and disorderly and usually end their careers by plunging into a sun, somewhere in the universe, or by exploding and scattering their fragments into space. When those fragments of broken comets are attracted into the atmosphere of a planet, they fall upon it and are buried in the ground, or are swallowed by the sea. These fragments are often called meteors. Among men, in the body politic, there are minds whose atoms rotate from right to left, overturning and destroying happy and prosperous, social and financial conditions. Such minds are found among those who hate and kill other men. They are the minds who delight in the downfall of other human beings and who seek to rob others of their possessions, both mental and material. Among men's foods and medicines there are nourishing, upbuilding things composed of atoms that are constructively rotating from left to right, and there are poisonous, destructive things composed of atoms destructively rotating from right to left. The poisonous, outlaw atoms clog the system, destroy the blood and break down the tissues. All poisonous things are destructive, and are composed of outlaw atoms, and yet, there are individuals who deliberately inject into the bodies of other individuals the deadly preparations they know are destructive. Should the body and the mind of a man be magnified until the atoms, of which he is composed, were to become visible to physical eyes, those atoms would be seen as rotating, revolving globes, or balls, and each a separate and distinct center of generating, magnetic force. The atoms composing mind intermingle with the physical atoms, influencing and controlling them by reason of their greater magnetic power. This control of physical atoms, by mind atoms, is accomplished through the conscious half of the mind atoms coming into contact with the conscious half of the physical atoms. It is here, as it is throughout the universe, that the stronger control the weaker. When a physical body is resting or sleeping, it is not manifesting or expressing force, but its atoms do not stop rotating. Each atom is a miniature dynamo continuously generating and storing force for future use. This is why sleep is necessary for an exhausted physical body, because, when the body is motionless, its atoms are accumulating more force than they are expending. If the magnified physical body should be afflicted with cancer, the diseased part would be seen composed of outlaw atoms rotating in an opposite direction from those which compose the harmonious, or healthy tissues. And those destructive, cancerous atoms would be rotating at a slower rate, and would be of a different color than the harmonious atoms. Should an occultist treat that inharmonious condition, he would send into the patient's body a magnetic stream, or army, of new, constructive atoms rotating so much more rapidly than the cancerous ones that the outlaws would be forced out and away from the body. and his work would be done upon both the mental and the physical planes. He would bring such material remedies into use, upon the diseased tissues, as would remove the destructive physical atoms, and his remedies would all be constructive. They would strengthen and stimulate the healthy atoms by reinforcing them in number, and the new atoms would take the places vacated by the outlaw or cancerous ones. But, if relief were not brought to this physical body and it were left to the destructive power of the cancerous atoms, then the rotary motion of the healthy atoms would gradually become slower and the patient's whole body would become negative to the destructive outlaw atoms. Positiveness, whether constructive or destructive, overcomes negativeness everywhere in the universe, and the positive, destructive, cancerous atoms in this patient's body would gradually overpower and change the rotary motion of the negatively constructive ones until the whole physical body and blood would become inharmonious and cancerous. But if the patient had evolved mentally and physically to a state of positive constructiveness, then his mental atoms would control his physical atoms and, repelling the destructive ones, prevent their entrance among them. Observation and experience have shown that, soon or late, destruction destroys itself. That a destructive center continues to attract destructive atoms to itself until there comes a revulsion among the destructionists and it is disrupted. And, while it is true that destroyers work more rapidly, while they work, and do more mischief in a shorter time than constructionists can immediately rebuild, yet, in the universe, the destructionists are so greatly outnumbered by the constructionists, that evolvement of forms will continue until the end of this cosmic day. When a constructive, evolving center, or form, is large, strong and positive enough to attract and control dissipated, unruly atoms, it can, by its magnetic power, change the rotary motion of those dissipated atoms and force them to rotate from left to right in harmony with its own vibration, and thus the destructive center may be changed to the constructive side of nature. For example, in cosmos, a comet that plunges into a sun is, by the superior magnetic force of the sun, stopped in its career. Its atoms are compelled to vibrate in harmony with those of the sun by reason of the greater number and superior magnetic power of the sun's atoms, and the consciousness of the sun's atoms is so much further evolved than is the consciousness of the comet's atoms that the sun absorbs the comet without shock or injury to itself. The continuation, or life, of a center depends upon its magnetic power to hold its atoms together, to keep them vibrating in harmony and, also, to continuously attract new atoms. And an individual mind must continually gain in knowledge and power of concentration, or become stagnant, for there is no center in the universe that is not changing for better, or worse, during a period of evolutionary activity. Everything must evolve, or devolve. What men call life is evolution. What men call death is dissolution. When the atoms composing a man's physical body have ceased to vibrate at a rate rapid enough for the mental, or higher, consciousness to hold them together, as a center of physical force, the man has ceased to manifest upon the material plane and his physical atoms must be dispersed. The dispersed physical atoms will again be attracted to other material centers while the same magnetic mind will create another material body by attracting other atoms, of a higher rate of vibration, into its matrix. And when this cosmic day is done, and this period of time has ended, the manifestation of God, universal consciousness, will again become vibrationless. The atoms composing all centers in the universe will cease to rotate and will remain motionless where they once manifested. And it shall then come to pass that, in the place where the tree falleth, there it shall be, and evolution will rest until the dawn of another cosmic day.
Thanks for watching the Wisdom Rocker. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.